First paragraph, this is kind of a good passage. Interpretations of the Indian past were inevitably influenced by colonial concerns and interests, and also by prevalent European ideas about history, civilization, and the Orient. Author is saying how Indian past has been interpreted. It is actually influenced by colonial concerns. How maybe British wanted, uh, you know, British wanted it to be inferred. That's all. Then author says Orientalist scholars studied the languages and texts with selected Indian scholars. So first thing is that interpretation of Indian past is influenced by colonial concerns. Interpretation of Indian past is also influenced by prevalent European ideas about history, civilization, and the Orient. How European people thought about history, civilization, and the Orient. What is Orient? Orient means related to Asian civilization. So, how Europeans thought about Asian civilization, this also has influenced the interpretation of Indian past. So, basically, it means that it has been influenced by colonial concerns only. Orientalist scholars studied the languages and the text with selected Indian scholars, but made little attempt to understand the worldview of those who were teaching them. So you are saying that, author is saying that interpretation of Indian past is influenced by the prevalent European ideas about the Orient and how Oriental scholars have studied it. If they have studied it in the wrong manner, so of course, European ideas would also be influenced by that. And subsequently the colonial concerns, which means interpretation of Indian past might be wrong. This is the thought process of this whole passage. Now, passage is probably trying to tell you uh, what is this interpretation, why that happened, and so forth. So, author said that Orientalist scholars were very selective in their studies. So they researched or studied the languages and texts with selected Indian scholars. But they did not make a wholesome attempt to understand the worldview of those who were teaching them. Basically, Orientalist scholars did not go on ground. They just cherry picked a couple of people, couple of, say Indian scholars, and they studied from them. So they thought, okay, this is how Indian society is. They did not make an attempt to go on the ground. And the readings, therefore, are something of a disjuncture from the traditional ways of looking at the Indian past, which means this has actually, this is the reason why interpretation of Indian past is distorted. If you understand this much, your job is done. You have understood the passage. And that's why it was important for us to spend some time on this first paragraph. Now let's see what author is trying to say in rest of the paragraphs. Then author says, now you're talking about Orientalism. What is Orientalism, how it has been influenced, or who it has influenced, or how it has been influenced by someone else, whatever the case be. Author says Orientalism, which we can understand broadly as Western perception of the Orient, how West is perceiving the Orient. This is called Orientalism. This fueled the fantasy and the freedom sought by European romanticism, particularly in its opposition to the more disciplined neoclassicism. A lot of times when we look at isms, we get fearful, but we don't have to be. So let's read it further and understand broadly what author is trying to say. The cultures of Asia were seen as bringing a new romantic paradigm. Another renaissance was anticipated through an acquaintance with the Orient. And this, it was thought, would be different from blah, blah, blah. Basically, author is saying that Orientalist view fueled the fantasy of Western or European poets. These romantic English poets, Wordsworth, Coleridge, etc. They thought that cultures of Asia, basically, they thought that Orient are bringing a new paradigm. Okay. What was that new paradigm? Let's check that out. So author is simply saying that it was believed that this Oriental Renaissance would liberate European thought from increasing focus on discipline and rationality that had followed from the earlier Enlightenment. The Orientalists thought the idea of Asian civilization was such that these Western poets were thinking that maybe this renaissance, this newness is going to liberate the European thought, which is much more rationalized, much more disciplined. What does author mean by that? This is what author means by that. However, this enthusiasm gradually changed. Why? To conform with the emphasis later in the 19th century on the innate superiority of European civilization. Earlier, they thought that it's a new beginning. But now they are thinking, no, it's not a new beginning because they had to align themselves with the colonial thought. Na? The interpretation of Indian past has been influenced by colonial thought that is mentioned in first paragraph. That is what author is coming back to. Author is saying, now this enthusiasm gradually changed. Now they were thinking that European civilization is the most superior. Oriental civilizations were now seen as having once been great, but currently in decline. The various phases of Orientalism tended to mold European understanding of Indian past into a particular pattern. Author is saying that the so-called discovery of India was largely through selected literature in Sanskrit. Selected literature. So this interpretation emphasized on one aspect of Indian culture. So basically they thought that, hey, over the last 3,000 years and so forth, that this culture has been, it was believed that Indian pattern of life was concerned with metaphysics, but little attention was given to more tangible aspects. So author is saying that the prevalent view, the colonial view, the view that suited the colonialism about India or Indian history was that Indian history or Indian spirituality is rather concerned more with the metaphysics and the subtleties of religious beliefs, but it was less concerned about the tangible aspects. Now, what did this lead to? German Romanticism endorsed this image of India. So India became a mystic land. Author is saying this is a half-baked interpretation of India because these Orientalists have used selective literature, selective scholars to understand India. They have not gone on ground. So this made India mystic. So every single thing was just mystic here. So even if I'm just moving this mouse, this also, according to this view, must be imbued with complex symbols. This guy is moving his mouse. Maybe he is trying to invoke a specific spirit that makes the cursor go here and there. So this is something I'm just making it up. I'm just trying to make you understand. So author is saying a dichotomy in value was maintained. Indian values being described as spiritual and European values as materialistic. And there was little attempt, little means no attempt, to juxtapose these values with the reality of Indian society. So the view that Indian aspect is more spiritual and Western aspect is more material was kind of incomplete because it was not really tested or understood on ground. And this has been more firmly endorsed by a section of Indian opinion during the last 100 years. And then it was a consolation to the Indian intelligentsia. If you have seen the movie Swades, then Shah Rukh Khan during the Dashera festival, when Shah Rukh Khan goes to that school, there was a guy who says that but there is something that Americans don't have, is that our culture. Okay. And then Shah Rukh Khan says that they have their own specific culture, we have our own specific culture. We can't say that theirs is bad and ours is good or vice versa. Right. So this is what author is trying to say, that because of this thought process that has been prevalent, that okay, Indian idea is more spiritual and Western idea is more materialistic, has actually been a consolation to the Indian intelligentsia, that they thought that West is technically more superior, but we were culturally more superior. And because West is technically more superior, that's why they could colonize us. And sometimes it also serves as you know, uh, a salve for having been made a colony of Britain. Okay. Salve means sort of a remedy or snehlep, marham. uh. So that's basically the whole passage is about. So passage talks about how a distorted understanding of Indian history has led everyone to believe something that colonialists wanted to establish. Let's check out the questions. It can be inferred from the passage that to gain a more accurate view of a nation's history and culture, scholars should do all of the following except to get an accurate understanding. What is it that scholars should not do? What is it that scholars should not do? That's my question. Question says scholars should do all of the following except. So according to the passage, scholars should understand a culture thoroughly from every perspective. They should go on ground and they should not be selective in choosing what, whom to learn from. Because Orientalists did it that way, which was wrong. What should scholars do? They should understand a culture from every perspective. So scholars should do all of the following except, which means what is it that scholars should not do? So 1, 2, and 4 talk about understanding a culture from all the perspectives. This is something that scholars should do. So this is not my answer. Scholars should widely read. Scholars should examine their own beliefs. Scholars should examine the complex reality of a nation society. Yes. But they should not be biased. They should not develop an oppositional framework. And hence my answer. It's a very easy question. We just had to decode what author is trying to say. Okay. In the context of the passage, all of the following statements are true, except which of the following statements is not true? What is it that you cannot infer? Okay, let's check that out. Indian spiritualism served as a salve for European colonizers. No, Indian spiritualism served as a salve for Indians. That, it's because of our lack of technical superiority we were colonized. But spiritually, we are amazing. So it was a snail ape. It was a marham. It was, a remedy. When we think that, okay, no, that's okay. This is a salve for something that salvages a situation, basically. It was a salve for Indians, not European colonizers. So this is something I can't infer. But all three things, in 2, 3, and 4, we can infer. Orientalist understanding of Indian history was linked to colonial concerns. Yes. Indian texts influenced Orientalist scholars. Yes. And Orientalist scholarship influenced Indians. Author says that Indian texts have influenced Orientalist scholars. That is mentioned in para 2. And then what they made eventually, what Orientalist scholars said, they also transformed the thought process of Indian intelligentsia. So 3 and 4 also can be inferred. 1 can't be inferred. Which one of the following styles of research is most similar to the Orientalist scholars' method of understanding Indian history and culture? Okay. Any option that states that without thorough research, someone is concluding something about a particular culture, that should be the answer. Which is most similar to the Orientalists' method. This is what Orientalists did now. Read a couple of books, talked to a couple of people, and gave their understanding on, okay, this is what Indian history is like. Very easy question. So the point is that in this whole passage, it was important to understand the idea of the passage thoroughly. Questions were more or less easy. Anyways, option 3, analyzing Hollywood movies to make out what contemporary America is. This is how Orientalist scholars also did the same thing. For example, if I am the Orientalist scholar and now I have to interpret American history and I have to see what American culture right now is, what would be the best way to do that? The ideal way is to go to the ground, talk to a lot of people. But if I have to follow the Orientalists' way, what will they do? They will maybe pick out a couple of people. They will talk to them. They will say, okay, whatever they are saying is true. So what do? I go watch a couple of Hollywood movies. I believe that whatever Hollywood movies are depicting is what is happening in their culture. Oh, okay, this is American society. So third is the answer. This is the most similar. In every other place, we are talking about, in every other option, 1, 2, and 4, we are talking about a thorough understanding of something, going through various things, reading the accounts, studying the artifacts. But third is not about going on the ground and studying. So this is the answer. Fourth, it can be inferred from the passage that author is not likely to support the view that, okay, let's check every single option. What is author not likely to support? Okay. It can be inferred from the passage that author is not likely to support the view that Indian culture acknowledges the material aspects of life. No. Author says that Indian culture gives less emphasis to the material aspect. This means that Indian culture acknowledges that there is a material aspect. So author will support this view, right? This is what author is saying anyways. So this is not my answer. Second, India's culture has evolved over centuries. Yes, there is a timeline given, 3,000 years or something. So definitely, Indian culture has evolved over centuries. This is something that author is likely to support. Third, Orientalist view of Asia fired the imagination of some Western poets. Yes, how Orientalists view Asia, how they viewed Asia, this fired the imagination of Wordsworth or Coleridge, whatever was given. So this is also something that author will agree with. India became a colony, although it matched the technical knowledge of the West. No. According to author, according to the passage, India became a colony because it lacked the technical superiority of the West. So this is something author is not likely to support, but 1, 2, and 3 author definitely would support.